Good evening, and welcome to the Thursday evening edition of Ridgecrest Talk. I'm Robert Eierman, along with co-host Al Huey, and tonight we are privileged to welcome Councilman Jim Sanders to our show. Thanks for coming in, Jim.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Jim.
I appreciate it.
And we're going to talk about water, and specifically the draft EIR that the county has put out and the land management use plan that goes along with that. So we were wondering, Mr. Sanders, if you had a leaning as to which way, what you think about it, some views on the whole thing.
Because you attended at least 2 presentations by Lorelei
That's
already.
correct. Yeah, she did the public workshop, and then she also came to the water ad hoc committee infrastructure.
Right.
The water ad hoc
her
meeting.
thing there. Yep.
And so you've heard from her, and you also heard there were some Q&A periods during both of those. So you kind of got a sense of where the public is.
Very, very good public comment, very good public input. I've also had a chance to dig through the EIR a little bit. I'm just been so strapped with time, I haven't gotten very far, but my
Such
plan
a small
is to
document,
read
I
through,
don't understand.
Yeah, right.
4 volumes.
Yeah, right.
Over 2,000 pages.
My plan is to read at least a good portion of it before we decide anything as a council. So my leaning is, first of all, water's a very serious issue right now in my mind. I'm very concerned about it, not in the immediate future. I don't think it's going to be a problem, maybe not even in my generation, but for the success of this valley long term, I think it's something we have to address now. Because right now we have solutions.
I don't think anybody would disagree with that.
No, that's very general,
but I think that a lot of the people's concern has to do with how it's being chosen to be addressed.
Yeah, that's true. So in terms of the county rezoning property, particularly under the undeveloped property, I haven't finalized my opinions yet, but I am leaning towards supporting that idea.
You also realize that they are rezoning occupied, developed property.
Yeah, that's correct. They are. I don't think that's a detrimental rezoning. I mean, it's kind of they're cleaning up some zoning things.
Well, doesn't detrimental depend upon whose eyes you're seeing that through?
Oh, certainly, yeah.
Somebody who's out there and has purchased that property and paid taxes on it all these years, because when they retire, they're going to go out there and hobby farm, and they want to be able to grow enough crop to be proud of and not only consume it themselves, but sell it to their neighbors. Oops, they no longer can.
I'll be the first to admit, it's not a pretty solution, and it's not in a perfect world that's not what we would do. But so far, I've been dedicating a lot of my time to looking at solutions to the water issue. None of them are pretty. They're all ugly. Every single solution I've come up with either hurts our wallets or it restricts our our privileges with the water in some way. I mean, there's no pretty solution so far that I've come up with. I would welcome with open arms a solution that was easy to pay for and easy to implement. But so far, I haven't found one. So, I mean, is this an adequate use of government authority? There's a lot of debate going on there, and I think that's really good debate to have right now, because I think those public comments are going to be very valuable when the Board of Supervisors make their decision. So.
Well, Lorelei has claimed in her or in the land management plan, but also during these public meetings, that this isn't going to fix any of our water problems right now.
No, that's right.
It's not going to change anything.
For the immediate situation, it has a zero impact on the water.
Right.
That's correct. Yeah.
So you're still...
It's the long term is where if all that agricultural property does get developed, if they plant crops in there or whatever they want to do in their trees, it could have a very serious detrimental effect on the aquifer status in the future. I think that's a very dangerous situation.
I would debate that with you.
Okay.
All the water that a farmer pours onto their land, the plants don't consume it.
Not all of it.
Not all of it.
Okay.
It goes down into the ground.
Yes.
Now, the Navy did a study, and they said that that amount of water is greater than any other amount of water going into the ground. It's 22,000 acre-feet a year. Now, that was back in...
For agriculture?
1988, yes.
Okay.
So, but all the water that you and I and Al use...
It's a great deal. Yeah, it's huge.
Just a second.
Yeah.
All the water that we use goes into the sewer.
Yes.
It doesn't go into the ground. So we are the water wasters.
Yeah.
Agriculture is the water conservers, because the water they put into the ground that the plants don't consume stays in the ground.
No. I disagree with that greatly. The water that...
Are you going to disagree with Dr. Carl Lawson?
Hold on.
And the Department of the Navy?
Let me explain myself.
Okay.
The water that goes into the ground, almost all of it gets lost in evaporation. It doesn't go back into the aquifer. I mean,
No.
even rainfall, from what I've been
That's
reading...
not a true statement. It doesn't evaporate. It doesn't reach the aquifer. I would agree with you on that. At least not in our lifetimes it won't reach the aquifer. But it's not gone like the water that you and I use.
I would say it's gone if it evaporates. It's lost to evaporation.
No, it's in the ground. 22,000 acre-feet a year is in the ground. That's not me. That's the Department of the Navy saying that.
With this climate, I don't believe that.
Yeah.
With this climate, the water within a few feet of the topsoil is gone.
Okay, time out. We're going to have to go to break, unfortunately.
Shoot.
So we'll pick this up right after the break. Join us. Welcome back to Ridgecrest Talk, and we're here with Councilman Jim Sanders talking about water again. And before we went to the break, we had a little discussion going on about, does the water evaporate that goes down into the ground, or does it not?
Yes. And my only point is, I'm not a hydrologist.
Yeah, neither am I.
You're not a hydrologist.
No.
So we have to defer, in my opinion, to the experts.
Sure.
And I was just quoting to you what the experts said happens with the water. Now, like I said, that doesn't reach the aquifer anytime soon, but it's back into the ground. It's not being consumed like the water that you and I do. It's consumed in the fact that it's now in the wastewater. Now, some of that wastewater is treated and used, but it's not used in the same way. It's back into the ground.
Okay.
But anyway, I wanted to...
If I could interject on that point, and that's one of the things we're bringing up with the city's ad hoc water committee, is looking at how is the best way to reuse that wastewater. We haven't addressed that issue yet, but it's definitely on the schedule for the upcoming meetings. We want to look at recycling the wastewater, treating it, and possibly not to potable levels where you could drink it again, but possibly distributing it to for industrial purposes or agricultural purposes.
Absolutely, that's what should be done.
It is a huge amount of water that goes into there, and it's right now we pump it out into the evaporation ponds, and it it's gone.
Right,
That's it. So
and we I completely agree with all of those aspects.
Yeah.
The problem that I have gets down to individual rights versus community rights.
Sure. Yeah.
And it has to do with constitutional rights to water.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And we've kind of talked previously about that. And I just, because of that, I just wanted to kind of go through where these water rights that people out in Eierman have.
Yeah.
And, you know, we've formed a country, and we have a constitution, and in that constitution, rights are delineated.
Yes.
And some people might ask where those rights come from. And the answer to that is that they're inalienable. They come from our Creator,
Yep.
or to put it in a secular
Natural
viewpoint, they're natural rights.
Yes.
The rights that we get because we're human beings.
Yes.
Okay, and what is it that the Constitution says about those rights? It says that the government guarantees us that the government won't take those rights away.
Mhm.
It doesn't guarantee that I won't take your rights, right? It just says that the government won't take your rights.
Okay.
So we've had conversation about your concerns that constituent XYZ that has property out there, their well ran dry.
Yeah. Well,
But that's a right that can, that's not a right.
I wasn't bringing that up in terms of rights.
Okay.
Yeah.
Relative to, so let's look at constitutional rights, okay? And we have the people out in Eierman, the farmers. We have Indian Wells Valley Water District. We have Cyril's Valley. We have the Navy.
Did you say the water? Yeah, you did say the water.
I don't-
And then the private property owners. Right?
Yeah, and then the property owners. Of those five, which one of those five, or which of those five have a constitutional right to water?
Well, the property owners do. Yeah.
Right. They're the only ones
Yeah.
in that group that have a constitutional right. And my question is, how is it that as a representative of the government, you can support something where you're going to take away people's constitutional right?
I don't believe it is taking away their constitutional right.
Let's
How
see the
so?
vote.
Explain.
Yeah,
Explain.
no, I'd like
please.
to explain. They still have rights to the water. I mean, they're still able to use their property just for different things, and they still have access to the water. They're still able to get the permits for wells, and use the water in ways that are beneficial, and
Well, then,
reasonable.
don't you
for the
remember at the ad hoc committee when we had the Q&A, and the lady got up saying that she had 27.5 acres, and that on part of the 5 acres they had a horse breeding and training, and their hope was to expand that and move that out eventually onto the 20 acres,
Yeah.
and asked Lorelei if she'd be able to do that and put a well in. And
Yes, I
Lorelei
think I do
said,
remember that. I don't remember what her response
she
was.
said no.
Okay.
So,
Because of the zoning, correct? Is that-
Yeah, if the
Yes.
zoning goes through.
yes,
Yeah.
if the
Right
zone
now,
goes
if it doesn't change, they could do that.
She could do that. That's
Right.
correct. Yeah. So this maybe you guys could help me answer this, but who would decide what's a reasonable use of the water for that property? I mean,
as long as you're doing something that's beneficial to the property,
yeah.
and you're not wasting water,
Correct. Yeah.
then growing whatever it is you want to grow is a beneficial use. And my point is, since they have a constitutional right to water, and none of the other groups that we mentioned have a constitutional right, and we also have the Fifth Amendment that says that the government will not take away life, liberty, or property
That's correct. Yeah.
without due process. And the 14th Amendment brings that from the federal government down to the states and all lower governments. If I have taken away your right to have that hobby farm and to sell the fruits of your labor, how is that not a violation of those people's constitutional rights?
Well,
and how is that not the people of Ridgecrest marching out to Inyakern, 22,000 strong, and saying to those 200 or 300 people, we're taking your water?
no, that's not what's happening.
But they're the only ones that are being punished.
No,
It
that's
is
not
kind of
true.
what's
the water
happening.
district has reduced their water consumption. The Navy's been reducing their water consumption.
And so have the
city's-
farmers.
But not
city-
by force.
The city's going to step up and reduce our water consumption, and that's what we do in the Water Conservation Committee.
We're going
but-
to have to take a break
Sure.
again. So keep that thought.
Okay.
And we'll come back and talk for a few more minutes about water with Jim Sanders, City Councilman. Join us.
Welcome back to Ridgecrest Talk, Thursday evening edition. I'm Robert Eierman, along with Al Huey, and we're talking with Councilman Jim Sanders about water.
Okay. You say that the people are going to still be able to continue to use the water after this rezoning's done, the property where it's already
Yes.
developed.
Yeah, rezoning does not affect
That's
your right to the
conditioned
water.
upon a letter from the county giving them legal non-conforming status.
No. Rezoning does not affect their right to use the water.
Yes, it
No,
does.
it affects
It
the right
absolutely
to
does
use
not.
the property.
It affects.
Yes, it does.
It affects how they use the water.
Well,
But
yeah.
they still have rights to the water. Those are intact entirely.
If I had,
The zoning laws
give-
are
I'll
all
give you a-
about.
I'll give you a
zoning
good
laws are all
example.
about how you use the land, right? And in my opinion, and again, I'm still forming my opinion here, so
I understand,
I'm open
understand.
to be persuasion
Okay.
on this. But in my opinion, right now, the way I see it is, if the Board of Supervisors goes ahead with this rezoning, they're in essence saying it is no longer reasonable to do agricultural land use in this valley because we don't have the water to support it.
Okay.
but that's not true. I point to you, the Department of the Navy. Well, first of all, let's talk about the fact that, were you here in the valley in the 90s and the 2000s?
I came here in 2007.
Oh,
Okay.
okay. Well, we had a BRAC, and so we put out to the world that we could support, and
I've
here
got
we
it
go.
right
Here
here.
it is. Yeah, we could support an
90,000.
annual water supply to keep a population of 90,000 in domestic water.
Okay.
That's more than 3 times.
For how
what-
long?
Oh, how
mean,
long? Perfect question.
Does it
Perfect
say that in there?
You have to go back to the 2012.
The 2012
Navy
Navy
EIR.
report says, oh, that's not the right one.
60 to 70 years
Yeah,
under
60
the
to 70
current
years.
conditions that we have
Okay.
right now.
And that is with aggressive ag.
Right.
Okay.
So we have, right here it says, Department of the Navy says, current research indicates that the Lahontan groundwater basin is not a closed system, and recharge to the basin is greater than indicated by previous studies. They also say that
I'd definitely
without
be
any
interested in-
changes to production and recharge rates, the Indian Wells Valley is projected to continue to meet demands for another 60 to 70 years.
Okay.
All right, so my point is, if we're going to go for 60 to 70 years, why are we doing something now
It's so drastic.
that's so drastic? Now, I agree, we need to do something, but I don't want the people out in Inyakern, the farmers, to be picked on. I think that they need to be left alone, and that you and I and Al and all the other residents of Ridgecrest need to share this burden with whatever we come up with to solve this problem, but to take away people's like I said, hopes and dreams and aspirations is just not what the government should do. And I want to know, there's a couple out there, Lynn and Tim Loskar.
Okay.
He's a cancer survivor. He is under strict doctor's orders not to eat processed foods or foods that come from the supermarket.
Okay.
So for years, they have been out there and they raise their own cattle, their own goat, their own turkeys, their own
chickens, sheep.
Okay? And they're on agricultural land.
Mm-hmm.
If this goes through, they won't be able to do that.
They can't slaughter any animals.
Why is that?
Because
They're not going to be able to have as many animals, and they won't be able to process them.
Okay, so
because that's your easy.
So I would support a recommendation to the Board of Supervisors saying that you can't reduce what people are already doing. I mean, I think that should be universally applied to all the
Okay,
properties.
and they claim that you
reduce
can
what you already
continue
do.
if you have a legal non-conforming letter, which I
Okay.
was getting to. We talked to another property owner, not on the show, but off air, they have some 35 acres out there. They got a legal non-conforming letter some years back. They had to pay for it, thousands of dollars, to
Okay.
get it from the county. And so they were wondering with what the planning, what they're planning to do, if that was going to affect their property because they had this legal non-conforming letter.
Okay.
So they called the county, and the county's response was, "What letter?"
And what happens when
This legal non-conforming letter
I can't.
is not mentioned in the land management plan.
Okay.
And you were there when Lorelei says, "Well, I need to talk to you. Come talk to me, and
Yeah.
we'll work something out."
Well,
If it's not in writing,
I wouldn't be surprised if this is not a perfect document. I mean, if there are imperfections, I'm glad these people are coming forward because they can be addressed in a public.
yeah, but some of
forum
these
and-
people
and
are your
it's documented.
constituents. The Loskars actually
Yeah.
have a home here in Ridgecrest.
Okay.
So they're some of your constituents.
Well, and those would be great examples to bring up into a letter to the supervisor.
Yes, but our point is,
It's-
why are they moving so quick? And then they're basing everything on the Todd report. You've heard Lorelei say that.
I don't. Well, yes.
Okay, so that's what
Okay.
they did. There are so many other reports
I
that
know for a
totally
fact-
conflict.
Yeah, I mean, I've talked to Mick Gleason, for instance, who
Which, by the way,
he knows about the other reports, and he's aware
Why
of those.
did
and
he start this?
He considers those as well. I don't think it's a drastic measure.
It's a terribly
hold
drastic
on, let me
measure.
finish. I don't think it's drastic measure to say empty, unoccupied land can be rezoned. I mean, that seems
But
like
they're
that's actually a
doing
pretty benign
all of
thing,
it.
in my opinion.
Yeah, but they're
And
not,
as long as the
they're
government,
doing
They're doing
occupied
all
land.
of it.
well, okay,
There were 18,000 notices sent out.
yes, I know.
There aren't 18,000 pieces of ag land out there.
No, they sent
And of course they
notices
sent
to
notices
everybody.
to everybody.
I mean, they sent notices. Even
How-
people in the city got notices.
However many there are,
Yeah.
what I'm saying is that I'm not even sure you need to go that far. I'm not sure that this isn't just a panic reaction that shouldn't be there. And
Why not wait
I-
for these GSAs to come on board, the groundwater sustainability agencies? But
Well, I mean, that's an option.
And you realize what kind of war this is going to start? Do you realize that there's already lawsuits sitting ready to be thrown to the county? And it's going to cause a war in this community.
Well, I mean, that's-
unfortunately, we
Yes.
are out of time.
All right.
Time
We'll
is
have to have you
useful.
come back
Yeah.
and we'll talk about this again.
Sounds good.
Join us next week.